Well, good morning. Here we are on Friday morning. We're looking at the same old scene, maybe a little bit different way, but I'm eager to get started in here and see what we have to do today. I have an optional goal in mind if we can get that far without coming into some real show-stopping bugs again. And that goal is to get to the point where we have a little vignette, a little scene of some characters. They're not animated, but they do kind of show up. They're built using a compute shader that I made myself, and so that's likely to completely fall apart. So we should take a look at the code of that. I cleared out a lot of the bugs that we ran into on Wednesday morning, which is a good thing. So we'll see what new bugs I run into, because I doubtless introduced more. But I have real sense of progress this week, which is good. So let's get going. So we'll just hit play here. If you remember on Wednesday, we ran into a showstopper right at this point. We tried to click on something and the camera was meant to zoom right in, and instead it just kind of crashed. And I haven't been able to reproduce that, so it'll probably happen now because we're live. There we go. At least that went okay. So here's our scene. We can see that we can choose a sort of arch to rebuild. Let's go Gothic today. That's good to see the two different building techniques working, the piece by piece as well as the polygon based one, the shader based one. Stair turret stays in place, so that's good. Here comes our window. And I've managed to get this system, this object browser system. It still feels a little bit awkward. I've got to work on that, but it stays in place now, which is a good thing. And let's build a perp window just for fun. We'll finish that one. You may hear a little bit of almost like what sounds like a boiling sound. That's actually a few rock slide sounds that were taken into and looped to try to be a sound effect of rocks kind of moving together. I really do need to work on audio. We're going to build a 2-story version of this tower today. But a nice 12th century one. So, oh yes, another thing which happened. Strangest bug. We've got these iron girders supporting the tower here in its kind of dilapidated state with all of the communication equipment on it. Oh, here we go. Look at that. Already running into a showstopper bug. Never ran into this yesterday. What's going on today? Who knows? Right. Well, anyway, these girders weren't showing up at all. All we were getting were the cross girders. I literally had to rebuild these polygon by polygon, and that was the only thing that would fix it. I have no idea why this model wasn't displaying after the shader-based rebuild. I really don't. I kind of wish I knew. I really wish I knew. But I've got it working now. The 3-story version I haven't rebuilt by hand because it's just too tedious. But I'll get to that eventually. Another thing I found while we wait here for this to crash, and who knows why, the console never gives me a clue, but another thing is that I really do like this closer up rather than farther away, so I've got to find some way. I've been struggling with the camera and camera views just to try to find one that looks best, so I think I'm going to try to experiment with closer in views and just see how that goes for a little while. But obviously, we've got some showstoppers here, so let's kill it. Who knows what happened? Because we'll do this again, and it'll be fine. And like I said, I never get anything in the console. So bear with me. here we come. All right. Yeah, I don't get anything in this console. I don't get anything in the system console, which makes this kind of bug hunting really, really difficult to figure out. There's my debug log. That's the wrong debug thing. So anyway, I don't know what was happening here today. So that's all the enlightened data. This is all the reload. Unsupported shader, all that kind of lovely stuff. That's fine. Well, it's rewritten itself anyway. Well, anyway, we'll keep an eye on this thing again. See what happens if we get any kind of silent errors that appear. I even ran the profiler on it, and nothing ever showed up from any of that. So I don't know. We'll just keep going. What would be great is if we could kind of reproduce it this time. Because I am getting optimistic that the tools I've made are enough to allow me to tell the story I want to tell, and that I can really just start working on you know, putting in the content and arranging the different levels. Rather than all of this kind of testing and that sort of stuff. See, all we're getting in the console is proper stuff. So I said we were going to build a 2-story version of this. So let's see if that helps. Oh, there we go. So yeah, that zoomed out view I would kind of like to not happen. Alright, okay, so we moved this way, and then I moved this way, and then we crashed. Getting any crashing now? No. So anyway, I do think this close-up view is somehow better. If we keep the view tighter, it's more engaging. Which I think is a really fascinating observation. I'm not quite sure how to handle that. The whole camera actually is a bit of an issue for me. But oh yeah, there was one thing that really wasn't working very well last time. We'll see what wasn't working, which is that we were having trouble rebuilding these respawns and piers and that sort of thing. And it looks like we still are this time. Oh, gracious. Only during streaming does it work not so well. Huh. Wonder why I'm having... No, there we go. Fine, it's going to work this time. Goodness gracious, who knows what's going on. Anarchy here. That's what it is. Anyway, last time when we would get a rebuild of one of these piers and it would have one of these kind of additional units here, that would never show up at all because it wasn't changing layer when the time would change. And now it is, so that took a while to track down. I can't even remember what the problem was. It was something obvious. But anyway, we can get these guys to rebuild. But anyway, this kind of much closer in view I really like. So I've got to find a way to make this one work for us. There we go. So in here we can choose between kind of Romanesque or a Gothic arch, but we'll do a Gothic because they're on Gothic piers. why not? We could mix and match if we wanted to. That'd create a much more architecturally interesting one. Ah, here we go. Now we've got some errors coming up. That's fantastic. Tons of errors. What's going on with this one? Oh, nice. Happening in the white dot manager. Good thing. Okay, good. We're getting all sorts of errors now. Again, did this happen last time? No, it did not. Didn't happen at all. But we got this index out of range error. Got all sorts of index out of range errors, which is nice to see. Maybe it'll give us something to hunt down here. And this white dot manager is being troublesome again. So is it the same sequence of problems? 86, 246, 1093, 265, 69, 77. So we have two different problems going on. The other chain is fine. It's just being launched from a different line of code. So let's just take a look and see what we can see here. We'll figure this out, but this white dot manager, like I said, this one manages the white dots that appear when you do have a choice. When you do have a choice of what to build. And I thought I fixed the error yesterday because I got it happening in the beginning and then it never happened again. But let's follow the chain of events that's going on here. So my mouse pointer, this is just, the pointer is just sending out a ray into the scene, and the ray is only colliding against a certain limited set of objects, but it sends it out every frame. It's being called an update. I called it a late update, and it just felt too laggy. Late update happens, well, I called it a fixed update, which happens every 10 frames, and even though that was 10 frames, it felt really laggy and unwell, so I'm sending it out in every update. This doesn't actually generate too much overhead. But I'm making my own system. I'm not using the Unity event system for this, which is what your standard mouse over would do. But the standard Unity event system seems to, I don't know, I can't remember, there's some sort of performance issue with it, like it generates garbage all the time or something like that. So I built my own, which is probably why nothing's working right. But here we go. So we entered something. So the game wasn't paused, the inventory wasn't showing. So we built our ray. Here comes the raycast. And this is if the raycast hit anything, which it didn't. Yes, it did. I don't know, where are we here? So this happened on pointer exit. So this is us leaving an object. So the raycast didn't hit anything, so it broadcasts its pointer exit command. And it might be that I'm using a messenger broadcast system. I don't know. So we go from there. This was the last one, so this is when our cursor moved off of an object. But after this, the chain of events is the same, so the messenger gets called, goes to the object placement script, which is the script that controls these interactable bits, all these bits with the blue lines around them. 1093 in that script. So line 1093 is another message, so we run into the hovered exit, so that's right. So the object that we exited picks up this, every object that has a hovered exit function on it picks up the message, and then they do a comparison. And I know this must be slow, but I can't figure out a better way to do it. And it compares it to its own object ID, which is better than doing a string comparison, which I also do a lot of. It said, oh yeah, this ID was mine. We're not in a menu, which is that block input. We're not locked. so we are interactable. It broadcasts a block scrolling so that we can't zoom in or out. We're kind of frozen. And then we're looking at all the different options inside all the different options for occupying that area, that interactable area. And if there was currently an option displayed, what it does is it says the mouse over, this is all on exiting, the mouse over is false. It clears out everything that it was showing, sets the game object that was in the place to false so that we're not seeing it anymore, and then it does this, which is really important. It broadcasts disassembled dots. And this is where we're running into trouble. So broadcast disassembled dots. So that's what the messenger is picking up here. And we're going to our white dot manager. Okay, here's the disassembled dots. So what this should do is this should pull apart the online UI thing with all the little white dots. It should pull it apart and get it ready for the next call. And what I think is happening when we get these index errors is that that's not happening quick enough. And so we're getting this system kind of tripping over its own toes because we're sending out a lot of these messages. So I need to find a way to get the system to successfully disassemble itself, and then only when it's disassembled to turn control over to the possibility of getting more, getting another assemble dots command, which is what I thought I did yesterday when I put in this check on assemble dots. So if the dots are visible, it won't try to assemble the dots. But we ran into this, is this an index problem? Yeah. So the index was out of range. So anyway, it's falling all over itself now. So the index it'll be talking about, it's always fun to figure out which index it's talking about, but it's this one, so it's the pool. So I have this kind of really barbaric pool system where I just have a pool of these UI dots already spawned and they sit off screen. And then if they're needed, they appear, and you draw one from the pool when it's needed, you display it, and when it's not needed anymore, you put it back in the pool. And you do this for as many dots as you need. But what's happening is that there's some sort of condition that's happening where disassemble dots is getting called too much, and we're overloading the pool because there's only like 7 or 8 dots that are created. And so this is what's happening here, is that it keeps asking for more dots to be thrown in the pool than we've got. So let's take a look and see what's happening here. I think we're just getting lots and lots and lots of these. I think we're just getting like a cascade of these disassemble dots command, and it can't keep up with it. So we need to do something where it filters out and says, I'm dealing with one command now. I can't take any more until I'm done. So let's take a look and see what's going on. Let's see if that's also what's going on the previous version of this. So this one's coming from a slightly different place. The chain is the same. The chain of calls is the same. Mouse at event dispatcher number 69. So let's go see what that actually is. So that's when it, again, it's calling mouse pointer exit. It's just calling it from a different place because it's hitting a new object. So the ray is hitting a new object. So it calls mouse pointer exit over the current object and calls mouse pointer enter over the next object. So again, we're just getting the dot system tripping all over itself. So let's walk through this and see how we can slow this down and how we can filter this one out, because that would be the best thing to do. So essentially, I'm sending some fast messages to execute some slow commands. Okay, well, one of the first things we do is I'm going to move this dots visible equals false. I'm going to move this down to the bottom of this function, because I think what I get, since I'm setting that at the top, I'm now getting an assemble dots command coming in when I go over a new object, and it can. So this was supposed to be the filter. If the dots visible is false, go ahead and try to assemble your dots. And then it turns on dots visible equals true when it finally finishes assembling the dots. This one, it declares dots visible false right at the start and then disassembles it. And I think maybe because it's declared false right at the start, we're banging into this and it's going, dots visible does equal false, so I can go ahead and I've got nothing. And then the whole thing trips over itself. I don't know, but we'll see. So another thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to run this filter. I'm not sure if this is going to make any difference, but doing this check here, this if check, that if the dots visible is true, is the only time it's going to run this disassembled dot. So the only time it's going to run this is if they're visible on screen. I'm not sure what putting another kind of boolean would do. I mean, I could try like a wait for end of frame thing, but that's getting into a coroutine. So basically to push it into the next frame. I don't know. I'm not sure if this is going to make it any better for us. I probably shouldn't have tried to update while we're in the middle of pause mode. As you can see, I've also got an issue here where the roof comes on, but it's in the wrong layer. So I've got to figure that one out too. So it's been a lot of bug checking today, or this whole week. But I have had a bunch of fun with it, so that's nice. Yeah, the problem is this dots problem only happens sporadically, so I'm not going to run it again just yet. I'm actually going to, I forgot I had another index out of range error as well. And this is in the stage manager. Now that's interesting. So what's going on in this? What's stage manager line 258? So this is the end. So like the tower is composed of 3 different stages. So I have kind of like levels in the composition of this game. And the levels are called areas. So I have 2 areas here visible on screen in this demo. I've got the tower area and I've got the rest of the parish church area. And they kind of manage the interactions and the timings of all of the rebuilding of these objects. And each area is composed of stages. So like if an area is a chapter, these are kind of subheadings within a chapter. And the stages control individual groups of objects and how they react with each other. And there are 3 stages in the tower. There's this ground stage that you run into first. Then there's the second story up stage. And then depending on how you rebuild the tower, you might get a 3rd stage, which is the kind of belfry stage. And each stage is run by a stage manager script, which is kind of this utility. And I was getting a problem. So stage manager line 258. What is line 258? Obviously, it's based on an index, and I was running out of index. So I've got a configuration-based locks, things to lock, unlock, length problem here. How many times did this happen? Once. Yeah, that's good. That's as many times as it should have happened. So that's interesting. So what did happen? Okay, so let's take a look and see what function this thing is a part of. What's it passing around? So the last object, let's walk through this. Mouse event 116. So we had selected an object. Okay. So that's on a mouse click over an active object. Messenger sent out the message. Object placement. This script is a mess, but it does a lot of work. Okay, so put an object in place and then called our onOccupy function, which means that once an option is chosen, we need to kind of tidy up and move to the next bit. Okay, that was chosen, that was fine. That called 1454, which is our onOccupy function. It went to the stage manager and said, check your stage completeness. Okay, because every time you build something within a stage, the stage manager keeps a kind of invisible score of how complete it is. And once a stage completes, it launches the kind of next bit of gameplay. And this system has always been wobbly because it's been kind of inflexible, and I've now got two parallel systems happening inside the stage manager, and they're not very well separated or defined, so I'm not surprised we're running into a problem with the check stage completeness function. Which will be what's called in Stage Manager 174, I betcha. Yep, so it checks stage completeness. So yeah, so what this is saying is that it got all the way down to this and called the onStage complete because it decided it was complete. And if the completed stage counter, so all of the different game objects in the stage were present and had been completed. So they were all there. So this is our little score. So the stage was complete, and now it's running the onStage complete function, which is right here. And that's where we ran into our out of range exception. Way down here. So when the stage completes, it runs a whole bunch of different checks. So it runs to see if some special objects were set in there, and then they need to lock and unlock other objects in the scene. And there's multiple different types of objects. This ends up being a really complex script, which I've always meant to untangle, and probably will once this kind of demo is kind of sort of complete and out there in the world. I will probably rebuild everything because there's just a lot of, like, all these commented outlines and things like that. There's just a lot of cruft in here that needs to be cleared away. But it was this one that we were running into, right? 174, 258. Yeah. So, each stage also has each area has a configuration. So once an area is complete, it's complete in a certain way, and there's only a certain number of ways it can be complete. And then that configuration of the area can determine what other areas get turned on and how they configure themselves afterwards. It's all really complex and wheels within wheels, you know. But anyway, and so what it's done is it goes into a list that it keeps of what happens under different configurations, and it locks and unlocks things based on all of these conditions. Because I've been trying to create this really flexible system to allow the user to kind of build whichever way they want and allow the system to respond, to have our to however they've built to create a sense of meaningful choices for the player. And of course, because I tend to think in rather overcomplicated and baroque ways, I've created a very baroque and complex system for something that probably can be done in a much more simple way. Anyway, to do this flexibility, I've run into this problem. So, yes, so I've run into too far. There's too much going on here. And I think it's because I'm using the same index. Here it is. So you'll see what I mean here in just a moment. I'm just going to walk through this bit of code to refamiliarize myself with it, because this is the first time, believe it or not, I've run into this problem in months. So, for I, that's my index in the special area configurations list. And for each, each configuration is an object in the list, and each configuration has multiple things inside it. So if we used this configuration, here's my index. So see, I'm running on J here. I'm not using the same index because it goes through first and it checks the unlocks array, things to lock and unlock. So something in the locks array was just not working. I suspect it's in stage manager number 2, because this is the most complicated one. Because this is kind of the filter where it determines whether we just do a 2-story or if we go on to a 3-story version. So this has to decide that. So we are in configuration-based locks and unlocks, these two arrays here. Well, there's nothing in any of these. That's odd. Special area configurations. This one, there's nothing. This is something I have to set myself. We shouldn't have gotten into this part of the code at all if we were working on object number 2. Maybe we were working on object number 1, but there's nothing there. I don't have configuration-based locks or unlocks anywhere. Unless that happened. We'll have to keep an eye on when that error happens again. Alright, well, once more, let's fire this up, see how far we get. Keep a better idea, keep a better watch on this console as well. So this whole system's far too complex. Now that I have a better idea of kind of what game it is I'm trying to build, I can hopefully clear out a lot of this kind of unnecessary code and make the necessary code a little bit more efficient. The biggest thing I have trouble with is timing in the code. Timing it to wait until one thing is done, you know, and the next begins. I've always had trouble with timing in the code. I've just never quite figured it out. Alright, pick that one up. So we're going to rebuild this 2-story thing again. The white dots are managing themselves just fine right here. Okay, so stage 2 is complete. So that worked out fine. Okay, this is where we ran into some problems before. Let's go grab this coin here, because otherwise we will not be able to continue. Let's just choose a random word here. Okay, we get the time travel portal open. All of that kind of stuff is working just fine. You know, I'm getting a bit of the ground that's missing here. This is irritating to me because I set all of that. It should be fine. All right. Oh, come on. Well, there we go. Sigh. I must have played through this 20 times yesterday. Never ran into this problem. So, let's find out what's going on. Let's go look at our other console. Broadcast, the date changed. The inventory manager. That's my SQL thing, so that's fine. There's no problems. There's the inventory manager. Doing lots of SQL stuff, which is all fine. This is all fine. I'm not getting any errors showing up in my console. But, you know, Unity's definitely dead, so let's kill it. Jump back in. Like, why all of this kind of stuff is showing up? My Android tools. Well, I really wish I knew what was killing it every single time. But this isn't really giving me any clue. Oh well. Well, let's start it up again. It's so funny, I never ran into any of this in 2 days. It behaved itself beautifully yesterday. I mean, it's my fault. I'm sure it's doing exactly what I told it to somewhere along the line. Oh well. So I'm going to chase all of that down. Chase down what's been happening with it. But let's entertain ourselves with something else just for a minute. Because at the end of building this whole parish church, what you should get is you should get this little scene with these little kind of ghostly figures, kind of all frozen in time. And they're made out of little cubes that kind of flicker and twinkle and glow. And they sit here in the chancel and they're kind of caught in the middle of an interesting scene. Something's going on in this part of the church. And you should also see these ruins and things like that. We're just not getting there at this point. But you should see this scene where those characters are. And that's important because there's a ridiculously important piece of loot. There's an object here you need to pick up. And that object unlocks time travel to all the other periods of the game. And that's what I've really been trying to go forward, because there's tons more content in this demo. Kind of the first stage, this is all the tutorial level, and the first stage of the tutorial level is just here's how the kind of building works. So here's your main types of building, here's how your navigation works, here's what architectural fragments do, and that they unlock more building options. I'm still not quite sure if I made that connection clear. And then at the end of rebuilding the tower, you get to pick up your first artifact, and then you learn here's what artifacts do. They help you time travel, and then you time travel back to the period in which you can rebuild the rest of the parish church. And once you've rebuilt the rest of the parish church, you get that one object that then unlocks and opens up time travel into multiple different periods. And that's where we go on this lovely tour of what this place looked like for the last 11,000 years. You can do a little bit of rebuilding here and there, pick up a few more objects, try to figure out, what happened here. That's the whole point. So kind of phase 2 or phase 3 of play in this tutorial level is, opening up the time travel. I'm just not getting there. So I'm going to take a look at our odd little scene here. I would call those little scenes cutscenes, even though really they're not cutscenes. But to me, they're kind of like the little bit of narrative that you get as a reward for getting through a little bit of gameplay, which is kind of a basic design pattern for lots of games these days. And I just can't remember what triggers this thing to happen. And I think it's because I have a really complex set of triggers, because again, I'm trying to be flexible for myself at design time and allowing these sort of scenes to be triggered if a variety of conditions are met. And I think that kind of flexibility is getting me in trouble, because this scene can either be event-based, so every kind of cutscene, every kind of like little vignette of characters who are posed, they can appear based on one or more options, which I set at design time. So it can either be event-based, something once a certain thing happens and is always listening for that event, then the scene kind of becomes visible. They can open up once an area is complete. So like just at the end of a level, essentially, they just appear whenever that level's completed, no matter what happens, and you tell it what area it's in. It can be based on space. Are you in the right location? And if you just appear in that right location, if you're just kind of exploring the island and you run across the right place, they'll appear. Is it time-based? Is there a certain time period in which they're always displayed? So these 4 different criteria, it can be based on any one of them for this scene to appear, or it can be based on all of them or any combination. Event triggered, space triggered, time triggered. And once the conditions are met, then it plays. The problem is that I wasn't able to the compute shader that it's built on is way above my head. Shaders I barely understand, and this one, compute shaders are rather complex. I'm being a bit ambitious here, and it means that I can't ever get the compute shader to display anything except in one layer. So I have to have a layer that's visible to all cameras all the time. So that's one problem I have. And the instance controllers are the things that feed the data into the shader. It's got a lock and an unlock. It's got a check date. Yeah, it pre-populates it so that it doesn't have to run something in start. And then these are the scripts that turn it on or off based on the triggers. Yeah. Anyway, that's where I'm headed. Maybe by the end of today, I don't know. I've got a lot of like real work to get to. But that's the kind of thing. I'm heading towards being able to see this because it's really important for progression of the player. So, not certain if it's going to be very useful anymore to watch me try to go through and hunt down some of these bugs that are just appearing that I can't reproduce consistently. That just seems like a bunch of tedious grind. So once again, this week was interesting in that I've made tons of progress, but while making progress, I also seem to continue to break tons of different things. So I'm going to go away and iron all of that out, and maybe next week it'll be ironed out a little bit more. It probably will, but I'll also probably introduce some new problems. But such is development, I guess. So, onward. Progress has been made. Not quite sure what this morning, but I am confident that we'll get through this. So, thank you very much for your attention this morning. I hope you have a great weekend. I hope we don't have any more crazy, weird political theater. I didn't get much done Wednesday afternoon. Too wound up about things. Let's hope we have a quiet weekend. I think that would be the best thing, really, for all of us. So, until then, goodbye.